All right, so get ready for a deep dive, folks, because today we're tackling cybersecurity at your request. And let me tell you, it's a wild ride based on all the news and reports and analysis we've got lined up.
Yeah.
You wanted the real story, the stuff below the headlines.
Right.
And we are here to deliver.
What's really striking this time around is just how many big names got hit. We're talking Cisco, AlphaSense, even Change Healthcare, which processes sensitive medical data for millions of people.
Oh, wow.
These aren't, small-time incidents.
Okay, so Cisco, that's like a giant in network security.
Right.
How did they get breached? I'm guessing it wasn't some amateur hour mistake.
Well, actually, it seems like it was a configuration error, which, is a reminder that human error is still a huge factor, even with, the best tech. But Change Healthcare is even more concerning.
Okay.
They allegedly lacked multi-factor authentication and proper system segmentation.
Oh.
Like basic security measures that could have prevented this whole thing.
And they're in hot water for it, right? I mean, over 100 million Americans potentially affected lawsuits from states like Nebraska.
Yeah.
This isn't just about stolen data. It's about, the trust and potential for identity theft and medical fraud down the line.
Yeah.
That's got to be scary for anyone whose data went through their systems.
Absolutely. And this case really demonstrates the legal and reputational risks that companies face when they drop the ball on security.
Yeah.
But, maybe let's shift gears a bit and talk about how attackers are upping their game too, because it's not just about weak defenses anymore.
Right, because just patching vulnerabilities isn't enough if the bad guys are using entirely new tactics. So is that what we're seeing?
Exactly. Like take the group Midnight Blizzard, for example.
Okay.
Their whole approach is stealth. Instead of using custom malware that, security tools can detect,
right,
they phish for remote desktop protocol access.
RDP.
Yeah, and then they use legitimate system tools for their malicious purposes.
Oh, wow.
So it's called living off the land.
So they're basically hijacking the normal functions of a system to fly under the radar.
Exactly.
That's sneaky. But doesn't that make them harder to catch?
Much harder because their activities look like normal admin tasks, so they can bypass a lot of security tools.
Oh, gosh.
And unfortunately, this ties into a much bigger trend. Phishing attacks are through the roof.
Really?
We saw a 202% increase this year alone.
Oh, my God.
Credential phishing specifically saw a 703% jump in just the second half of the year.
Whoa. Okay, so those are some serious numbers. So it's not just about suspicious emails anymore.
No, not at all. We're seeing phishing attempts on all sorts of platforms now, even ones that seem really secure, SMS teams, LinkedIn, you name it.
Wow.
Attackers are getting creative, and they know that people kind of let their guard down in these seemingly safe spaces.
No matter how secure we think we are, there's always like a new trick up their sleeve.
Yeah.
That's unsettling, to say the least.
It is, and that's why we have to go beyond just reacting to breaches. Understanding these tactics can help us anticipate what's coming next.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of things to watch out for, our sources mention a bunch of vulnerabilities that have security experts kind of on high alert.
Yeah.
Apache Struts 2, BeyondTrust, LDAP account manager GStreamer. The list goes on. Is there a common thread here, or is this just random chaos?
It's not exactly random, but there's a real sense of urgency with these because they can lead to some serious consequences, Remote code execution, data theft, even system crashes.
Okay.
We're talking about, core functions that attackers can exploit to basically take complete control.
Okay, so that's terrifying. But realistically, how do we even keep track of all these vulnerabilities?
Yeah.
Is it just this constant race to patch things before the bad guys find them?
Patching is essential, no doubt, but I think what's even more important is understanding why these vulnerabilities exist in the first place.
Yeah.
Many of them stem from, insecure coding practices, like failing to validate or sanitize user input.
So it's not just about fixing the holes, but making sure they don't appear in the first place. That seems like a tall order, especially given how complex software is these days.
It really highlights the need for, a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
Secure coding has to be baked into that development process, not just an afterthought.
Right.
And, for you, the listener, this means paying attention to those patch notes.
Yeah.
Don't just blindly click update, but try to understand what is being fixed and why it matters.
Good point. Knowledge is power, especially in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out a bit because our sources also included some reports that look at, the bigger picture of cyber attacks.
Right.
So what kind of trends are we seeing beyond these individual incidents?
Well, the top 10 cyber attacks in 2024 report really underscores the breadth of this problem.
Oh.
We're not just talking about data breaches anymore, but attacks on critical infrastructure, supply chains, even democratic processes. Remember Volt Typhoon?
Yeah.
That one targeted U.S. critical infrastructure and really showcased how, geopolitical tensions are spilling over into cyberspace.
Right, and then there was that Snowflake incident impacting over 160 enterprises.
Yeah.
Like, no one is safe, from individuals to governments to these massive corporations. So is there any rhyme or reason to who gets targeted these days?
The targets are definitely more diverse than ever before, but there are some patterns emerging.
Yeah.
The report suggests this shift towards attacks that disrupt operations or cause, economic damage rather than just stealing data.
Okay.
It's about maximizing impact and really creating chaos.
So it's not just about the data itself, but the leverage it provides. That's a chilling thought. But what about us, the everyday users? Where do we fit into this picture?
Well, that's where the Recaro report comes in.
Okay.
And it highlights a disconnect between consumer perception and the reality of data breaches.
Okay.
Only 5% of consumers recognize in-flight or threats as a significant risk,
Really?
even though human error is a major factor in many attacks.
So we tend to focus on the external boogeyman while ignoring those potential risks that might be within our own organizations.
Exactly. And it highlights the need for better security awareness training at all levels. It's not just about having the latest tech, but about creating a culture of security where everyone understands their role in protecting that sensitive information.
So it's like a human firewall.
Right.
Reinforcing the technological one.
Precisely. And speaking of firewalls, it's interesting to see how governments are stepping up their game, especially when it comes to cloud security. The U.S. government in particular has been pushing for stronger security measures in the wake of several high-profile incidents.
Okay, so what's changed? Is this just talk, or are they actually taking some concrete steps?
They're definitely walking the walk. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued Binding Operational Directive 2501, which mandates federal agencies to strengthen their cloud security posture.
So not just a suggestion.
No, it's a directive with specific deadlines for compliance.
So there are some teeth to this.
Absolutely. Agencies have until February 2025 to identify all of their cloud service providers and assets until April 2025 to deploy continuous monitoring tools, and until June 2025 to establish and implement multi-factor authentication for everyone accessing their cloud resources.
Wow, those are some tight deadlines. It seems like they're finally recognizing the urgency of the situation.
They are, and it's a step in the right direction, especially considering how many breaches stem from misconfigurations and weak security controls in the cloud.
Right, and this brings us back to that recurring theme of human error, doesn't it? Even at the government level, it seems like those basic security hygiene practices are often overlooked.
It's a challenge that, every organization faces, but what is encouraging is this increased focus on accountability and, proactive measures.
Yeah.
It's no longer just about cleaning up after a breach, but about preventing them from happening in the first place.
Right, because the damage done by a cyber attack can go far beyond just those immediate financial losses.
Absolutely. It can erode trust, disrupt critical services, and have long-term consequences for individuals and organizations.
It's clear from this deep dive that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. But I'm curious, with all these vulnerabilities and evolving tactics and constant threats, is it even possible to stay ahead of the curve? I mean, where do we even begin?
It can feel overwhelming, for sure. But the good news is that, a lot of attacks exploit the same basic weaknesses.
Okay.
So focusing on those fundamentals can really go a long way.
So what are the cybersecurity fundamentals that we should all be kind of hammering home?
Well, for you, the listener, it starts with those basics.
Right.
Strong, unique passwords for every single account, enabling multi-factor authentication wherever possible, and just being hyper-vigilant about those phishing attempts. That means, not clicking on suspicious links, not opening attachments from senders you don't recognize, and just verifying requests that seem even the slightest bit off.
It sounds simple enough, but I'll admit sometimes I get lazy with the password managers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to just use the same password for multiple sites, especially ones that I don't use that often.
I get it. Convenience often trumps security. But think of it this way. If one of those, low-stakes accounts gets compromised, attackers can use your credentials to try other sites.
Right.
It's like leaving a key under the doormat. You might get away with it for a while, but eventually someone's going to find it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good analogy. I'll definitely be more careful with my passwords from now on. But what about for organizations? What can they do to kind of bolster their defenses beyond just reminding employees to not click on sketchy links?
It's about building that culture of security, not just relying on tech. Having those robust security policies, regular security awareness training for all employees, and actually testing those defenses
Okay.
with things like, simulated phishing attacks.
So don't just tell people what to do, actually, like, see if they'll fall for the tricks.
Exactly.
That sounds smart, but also a bit nerve-wracking.
It can be, but it's better to find those weak spots in a controlled environment than, in the middle of a real attack. And of course, having a solid incident response plan is crucial.
Yeah.
If a breach does happen, you need to know how to contain the damage, recover quickly, and learn from that experience.
It's like having a fire drill. You hope you never need it, but you got to be prepared just in case. Well, this deep dive has been a whirlwind of information. We've gone from those alarming headlines to sophisticated attack tactics to the need for vigilance on all fronts. And it's clear that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's really woven into the fabric of our digital lives.
And it's something we all have a role to play in. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, so we need to stay informed, adapt, and, continuously strengthen those defenses.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Knowing what you know now, what one step will you take today to improve your own cybersecurity or that of your organization? Head over to our social media and share your thoughts, your plans, even your questions. We're all in this together, and the more we learn and share, the better prepared we'll be for whatever comes next. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.